Right, what have we got today? Right, it's another Lumintop. Now, I'm a big fan of Lumintop for the reason being the workmanship on them is beautiful. The threads are always nice. It feels rock solid. They always feel extremely high quality engineered. Even though I did have a go at the Lumintop GT Mini for using the GT moniker when it's got not a lot to do with the GT, but I'm going to steer away from that and concentrate on what I'm supposed to be talking about because my reviews are getting long enough. So this one is it's their EDC. Now EDC, for those who don't know, just stands for everyday carry. In other words, you're going to have it with you at all times, but I would presume this is to be considered more of a backup device, as in it is a keychain flashlight. You're supposed to keep it with you. Your keychain and all your keys, and you've got it with you should you need it. So this is the Lumintop EDC01 they call it, and I've already opened the box because I've done some preliminary testing which I like to do, and this runs on a AAA battery, so it's pretty small. So let's get in and see exactly what you get within the package. Right, so you get this, which has Japanese at the top there by the looks of it. I presume that's to, spread the word, we are fantastic. And there's a little bunny just in case you didn't know. And there it is in English, just saying slag us off if you fancy. Well, I don't, so I'll put that to one side. So what do you actually get here? That looks like your keychain attachment, and there's a few, I don't know what that bit's for. Bear in mind there's nothing in it. Is that where they stick the $20 note to bribe you or something? I'm not sure what that's for, but I'll put all the bits out so you can see what they are. There's the actual unit itself. Oh, it feels quite nice. It's almost got a ceramic-y feel, in the same way that if I've got one knocking about, the jet beams have that feel. It almost feels like the surface you get on those French ceramic cooking pots. It's very smooth and cool to the touch, so almost like a ceramic. It won't be, it'll be an anodized paint, but let's get all this stuff out. So push that out. I'm not sure what that's for. That may be for a different model, that little slit there. So let's get everything out and then get rid of the box. Right, what we've got here. So there's two O-rings. Obviously, I always explain this. The point of an O-ring is it goes between two machined parts where you have a thread and they come together. The whole point of the O-ring is it goes around this the circumference, and it provides water protection, or as they'll sometimes call it, ingress protection. Ingress just means get in, and protection just means to stop that, so it waterproofs it. So two spare ones, which is pretty standard for most Chinese manufacturers, so we'll get that out of the way. And here's the keychain attachment. Let's see if it's a decent one. Now, it's one of these bent metal ones, which I don't normally like, but okay, I'll let them off. I like that this is quite large and allows for movement. It doesn't restrict the rest of the keys. And I'll be honest, even though I don't generally like this design where they just literally bend a piece of metal for torsion, it's okay. It's not bad. The reason I slag a lot of these off is they come off, and I think, well, what's the point? Unless you use just a split link like that, that isn't going to come off, whereas a lot of these tend to, in your pocket, get in a certain position and off they come. But okay, it's tighter than some of the other ones. I was looking at some of the Night Eyes products, which have this sort of arrangement of it, like a bent piece of metal, and they're useless. But okay, it's free, and it certainly does the job anyway. And obviously I presume that it goes, yeah, so you've got quite a big attachment point there, and it's big enough for this to go through, I presume. Yeah, just so nice to see. And there's your attachment point, so get that to one side. What else we got here? Here's the manual. Okay, so there it is in Japanese, if you want to learn Japanese, which I don't at this precise moment in time. And there it is in English, so I shall study that. In fact, I'll leave it there just in case anyone wants to pause it and have a look. Worth noting there is, look, 10440 is forbidden. Now, the reason they're saying that is, look, if you look at these, the AA configuration, form factor I should say, batteries, nickel metal hydride or alkaline, they're just slightly different chemistries, and they pump out a similar voltage on maximum anyway. So 1.2 is usable, no problem. Alkaline is recommended because you get a higher starting voltage. But then look at the lithium ion chemistry, massive voltage, so forbidden. Therefore, do not use a lithium ion cell on this, which is a shame, but okay, fair enough. Not all units can do that. And then you get this, which I shall put to one side and explain in a moment, if I remember. Right, so let's get on with the item itself. So I shall open this first and find I must find a battery. So I think I have one here. There's one. So what I'm going to use is, I'm going to use a, which one's this? This is an Anyloop Pro, which I go for all the time, even though I saw some testing recently. I don't know what the YouTube channel was. It might have been Project Farm or Big Clive's channel or something like that. And the Anyloops, non-pros, so I'm talking about Anyloops, so they're the white ones, came up with this very similar result to the Larder cells from IKEA, I think it was. But bearing in mind they come from virtually the same place in Japan, I'm not surprised. But I presume the Pro's longevity is better. But I have no evidence to back that up other than anecdotal in my own usage. So let's have a look at this. So I'll pop this in, plus to the top like most of them. And let's see what we've got here. Now that's quite nice. There's your PCB at the bottom there. I'll just do this so it can focus. PCB at the bottom, then you've got a nice little separator there. There's no spring at the top, but there will be one at the bottom. I can't see down there, but if you watch the bounce, there, that's bouncing, so it's on a spring. There's a spring down there. Now you can't take that section off, which is fine. That doesn't bother me. So the spring is at the bottom. And let's test the threads here. Threads look nice. They've got pin on, and there's your O-ring. And typical Lumintop, these will probably be quite smooth. Let's check that. Yeah, super smooth, but it feels tight in that it will be retained. As I've explained before, I generally carry a ThruNite TI3, which is extremely similar to this. Extremely similar output, different options at the top here. But with that one, because it's a rotary action, in order to turn it on, you have to rotorize, which isn't really a word, but to the top there to turn the unit on, which I shall do here. And then obviously to make sure that's not being used, you disengage that. Now by disengaging that, you're taking it closer to the point where the head will fall off. So on the TI3, I've had 3 or 4 occasions over the past year where it's loosened itself off. It's come off completely, and then there's a battery in the pocket, it's fishing around. This is off, and you take your keys out, and you've just got this, which is absolutely ridiculous. But on this Lumintop, I will say it feels extremely tight. I'm confident that that will retain. You're not having to use thread locker or anything like that, but it's certainly there. That's decent. I like that. So let's go over some of the specs. So this is a AAA battery, like I say, so it's very small. It's in the same ballpark as something like the TI3, which I just mentioned there, and something like the little Jet U from JetBeam. It's certainly not as small as something like the Rofus, but they use a different battery anyway. But I will go over that, and then I'll go over some of the other options like the Astrolux A01 and so on. So it's rated at IP68. Now I'll break that down. So IP just stands for ingress protection. The first digit 6 means it's dust proof when it's sealed, and you've got everything working properly. And the next digit, the 8, means it's waterproof. So IPX8 means you can put that into 2 meters of water if the seal's intact and you've tightened that up properly. I always state that because I don't want manufacturers to have a go. And you've got 2 meters of water on top, you're generally okay for 2 hours. They will recommend that will last. I like IPX8 lights. I think they should all be IPX8. I understand sometimes that's not possible when you've got silly USB flaps like this, which let it down and then the water can get in no problem. But okay, that's how they've chosen to design that particular item. But IPX8, fantastic, well done. And this works on the CREE, I think it's the XP-G3, which is about standard for most of these AAA lights anyway. And the maximum from that is quite a conservative but useful 120 lumens, which is absolutely fine. And that's on the max setting, but there is 3 settings. And it has a 1.5 meter drop rating, so if you drop that from 1.5 meters, you're generally okay. Now, I will state that means the light will be okay. The cell may be damaged, but the light will certainly function according to the manufacturer. 1.8 is about the going rate. I mean, some of these cheeky manufacturers will just give you a drop rating of 1. Some go up to 2, and if you've got like an Army Tech or something, it's 10 meters or something mad like that. But they're highly over-engineered. Now you can get this in other colours. I chose to get this in a boring black, but you can get it in golden, pink, blue, or purple. So if you're off to Mardi Gras, you can get all those lovely colours. I did see the pink one, and unfortunately when I saw the pink one, when I scrolled down the page, I only saw that section, and it was in bright pink, and it looked pretty much like a sex toy. So it's probably not something I would order. Not that I'm against sex toys, but there you go. Moving swiftly on. So let's go through how you operate this. Now there's no buttons, side or tail, so the only way to do it is rotary action. So what you do is you turn it on via a twist. So you tighten it. Remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey, as you learn at day one in DIY school. So righty tighty takes you through the mode. So I'll go through them now. Strangely, they go backwards, so I don't know, most of them will go low, medium, high, low, medium, high. This seems to go backwards, so I'll go through the mode. So you've got low there. Now low is 5 lumens. Now that's for up close stuff. It's certainly not 1 lumen or sublumen, which is what you would refer to as either, some manufacturers call it night mode or moonlight mode or firefly on the through nights and things like that. A really low mode is so it doesn't ruin night vision, but I'm not going to go into that because this doesn't really have that. 5 lumens is too much, I would consider, for a low setting for protecting night vision. But 5 lumens is fine for real up close stuff, and then that'll give you about 36 hours. Okay, and then the next one is medium. So medium is 32 lumens. Now you get 4 hours out of that. I think that's pretty good. 32 lumens is basically just enough to get you through some woods, I would say, because I've probably told this story before, but I will say it again, where I was out geocaching and I only had, because it got dark unexpectedly, and I only had the through night TI3, and it just lasted. It took me about 40 minutes to get back, and the part where I needed light, it just lasted. So that's why I sometimes have a go at some of these smaller lights. Yes, they're smaller, but they'll give you 20 minutes on maximum, which isn't enough. This is going to give you longer. So I wouldn't like to have to rely on something this small where if you do need it for half an hour, it ain't going to work. So medium, 32 lumens, 4 hours, and then low again. So then high, that's your brightest setting. So 120 lumens, pretty good, and you get half an hour out of that. I think that's pretty conservative. Because this is a Lumintop, you're probably going to get a little more than that, especially if you use a decent battery like the Anylook Pros, which have a very good capacity. So very interesting. Nice output, actually. I mean, I'll explain why this uses a TI. Sorry, I'm saying a TI. It's a TIR. I'll do this quickly. Now, I know some people are complaining, saying, stop going over the reflector types. But the reason they're right, because it takes away from the review. But I have to do it because I was checking the stats, and about something like 12% of my viewers are subscribed. So for the people who aren't, which is the vast majority of the viewers, they probably need to see this. I'm presuming they may not be aware of the different reflector types. So generally, you've got your bare LED, so like this. There's your LED. Now generally, it comes out pretty indiscriminately. On an LED, you have your light emitting diode and then this plastic dome over the top. Now that's pretty indiscriminate. It's even coming back in your face. It's just wasting those lumens. I would prefer that they, not that I hate this night core, I like it, but I think they could do better with a slight reflector. So instead of just having indiscriminate light blasting into the world and being wasted, in my opinion anyway, what you can have is you can put a reflector over the top, and then the light bounces around within the reflector. You get your light from the LED there, and then you get your reflected light in a what's called a spot. So when it hits the wall, there's your spot and there's your spill. So I'll give you a quick example of that. So here is the Xan flare. So I shall turn that on. Okay, so can you see what you're getting here? There's your spot, which is the directed light from the reflector, and then from here to here is spill. So that's your superfluous light coming directly from the LED. So these are great for pushing the light out into the distance where you want it to be. So if you're looking across a field, bang, it goes all the way across the field. And you get a little bit of this light for close-up stuff, and so you can see where your feet are going if you're running or walking and things like that. Now up close, it's not particularly good. Can you see what's happening? Look, you can't even see the detail on that drawing I've done. So pretty useless for up close, you could argue. Although yes, you can turn the intensity down. But your other option, therefore, is to use, instead of a smooth reflector, I'll give you a close-up of that. There's the smooth reflector in there. So it's literally just a smooth polished surface or a metallic. It's mirror-like in essence. I mean, that's not perfectly smooth, but it's close to. Now the other option is to use an orange peel reflector. Now they call it an orange peel reflector because the surface mimics in some ways an orange peel, in that if you look at an orange up close, it's certainly not smooth, is it? It may look quite shiny, but it's got bumps and aberrations in it. So an example of that would be, here is one of my favourites, the BLF A6 Special Edition. So if you look at the reflector there, see how it's bumped? See those little ridges and bumps? It's certainly not perfectly smooth, you could argue. So what happens there is, when the light comes out, this spot is less defined. So when it hits the wall, you get this sort of look. In other words, what's actually happening is there's a semi-transition between the spot and the spill. So if I fire this now, I need to turn it up a little bit to a sensible level. Even though that's quite a high setting, can you see how it's no longer obscuring the detail to the same amount? And between here, there's almost like a little transition. So you get a better transition. So what's the point of that, you're asking? Well, you're limiting the obscuring of detail with the spot, but you're not going to get as much distance as you would get with a traditional reflector. So you think, well, okay, well, what's the far end of the scale? Well, the far end of the scale is use a TIR. Now, one of the benefits I like of a TIR is look at the distance between the LED and the emanation of the light there. You don't need all this big bowl. All you've got is a piece of plastic, really. So there's your LED, and you just dump over the top the TIR. Now this TIR I've just shown you there has a honeycomb configuration on the outside layer. So what happens is the light enters the TIR, bounces around within it, and leaves as dictated by the surface. So you lose no, well, you do lose a tiny little bit, but not a lot of light in the transmission between this medium and then when it hits air. So what happens? So we'll turn this on. Now I'll turn this up to quite a high setting. Now watch. Even though that's at a high setting, see how there is, if you look closely and under certain conditions, but basically it's all transition. There's very little spot. You could argue that there is a spot, which there is, but as soon as you pull back a bit, it's gone. So it's all transition. So what's the point of that? Well, up close, it's fantastic. But obviously at range, you're spreading out the lumens that you have instead of focusing them. So what have they done here? Now, bearing in mind this is 120 lumens, you probably wouldn't want a smooth reflector because you don't have enough light to fire anyway. So by doing this, they've been able to reduce size, so you haven't got to have this big reflector on. So they've reduced size, and they've factored in the fact that this is going to be used mainly for close-up stuff. You're certainly not going to be firing this across a field or, you know, up at aircraft or anything like that. It just isn't going to happen. So they've quite sensibly chosen a TIR reflector. So all the light is right in front of you. So it's nice to see that. But I do like to go through that. And like I say, I do that because not everyone who watches this is a subscriber, and they may not be aware, but I do like to cover these things. But anyone else, just fast forward, and I have, I'm going to try and get some laminated sort of things of this so it'll save time. But anyway, back on the review. So there's your little things. I quite like this. Feels solid. I'm confident. I normally whinge about rotary actions because they fall off, but I'm very confident because it's a Lumintop and their engineering is pretty damn good. I've never had a bad Lumintop engineering wise. They all feel brilliant. All the threads are really smooth and tight and well designed. So I think even though this is a rotary, I can go with that. TIR on the top makes perfect sense to me because you're only going to be using it up close. I really like this, and I like the fact it's got quite a large receptacle there for split links and things like that, instead of having to use tiny little weedy ones that fall to bits. So I appreciate that. So nice to see. I will go over what this is. Basically, there's two glow-in-the-dark features on this. So for example, if I turn this on, put it on maximum, right? There's a little gasket in here. So what's happening is light's hitting that gasket, and instead of reflecting straight back, it's coated with something which releases energy slowly. So if I show you, right, if I turn this off, you see that green glow there. So what's happening is light has hit that, energy is being returned slowly through the glow that you see. It's more of a gimmick than anything else, because if it's a keychain light, it's going to be on your keychain, and if you can't find your keychain, well, do you know what I mean? And that's not going to glow for very long. Glow-in-the-dark stuff doesn't last. It's not fluorescent or bioluminescent or anything like that. It's simply returning energy slowly, so it won't last. So it's sometimes more of a gimmick, I find, but it's an interesting feature. Now, if you wanted something that lasted a little bit longer, what you could do is you could use this. Now, technically, yes, it glows in the dark, but the main feature I would use this for is a diffuser. Now, the whole point of a diffuser is you can do that, get on with work, because, you know, it's literally diffusing the light in almost 360 degrees, isn't it? So you lose a bit of light, but it allows you to work on machinery and things like that. And then what happens is when you turn this off, this glows in the dark. So you can see that glow there. So quite an interesting feature. I'll put that in some darkness there. So interesting feature. I don't know what the point of that glowing in the dark is, but it's there if you want it. I understand the point of a diffuser. I've sometimes worked out in a gym, and when the lights go out, I've used cups of water and all sorts of things as a diffuser, and they work just as well. But it's handy to have this. But I don't know where you would carry that. If this is on your keychain, where would that be? You know, would you wear that on a finger and walk around like that all the time, just on the off chance you need to pop that on? So I'm not sure where you would put that, because what's going to happen in reality is that's going to end up in a junk drawer. And then when you do need it, where's that diffuser? Oh, it's under Uncle Frank's old knife, and you never find it. So, okay, I appreciate the fact that you get that, but I may not use that. Right, let's compare this quickly. So if I was comparing this to something like the Astrolux, I like this, the Astrolux, I think it's A01. It's a bit heavier though and feels blocky. I mean, look at the difference. Now understand that some of that height difference is because that has a reflector. So it's unfair to say, well, that's too long. It's not, because it's got a reflector, but it's certainly more bulky. It's got a very similar output, you know, and it's going to do exactly the same job. The rotary is pretty nice. It's certainly not up there with a jet beam or a Lumintop, but it's okay. It's about the same as a through night, and it does just as good. But obviously, I mean, you may not be able to see that on the video, but I can. And there's banding going on there, which would suggest this is using what's called pulse width modulation, if I can say that without getting my false teeth falling out. At a pretty low rate, and that's generally to save battery. Most of them have pulse width modulation, but if you can see it, it can be a little irritating to the eyes. You may not be able to see that on video though. Okay, so that's certainly cheaper, but it's more bulky. So there's your first option. Your other option would be to get something a little similar like the jet beam. I like the jet beams. They've got a similar surface to that. Nice. I've never had a problem. Now this uses a TIR, but look, it's different. You see how that one's got like a faceted honeycomb surface on it, almost like a bug's eye. If you ever look at a close-up of a fly's eye, they're faceted, although they are all little separate lenses. On this one, it's TIR, but it's one solid piece. Instead of having all this configuration on the outside, it bends light how they dictate rather than how it ends. So it's very similar to Olight. Use this a lot, and it makes the lights quite short, but they're not so good for throw. Obviously, I've tested them myself, and they're not so good for throw. But that makes sense. You know, this is attempting to throw and spill at the same time with that sort of design of TIR lens. But you're going to get similar output. But again, look, Lumintop's shorter, so I'd probably go for the Lumintop. They're a similar price, but I certainly like this. The clip on this is very weak. I wouldn't trust that, but I like the fact that it's got multiple points for attachment though. So there's your other option. Another option could be to get something even smaller. I'll go through both of these because they're very similar. They both use a TIR, as you can see, and they're both extremely small. Now the benefit of these is, yes, they use a tiny battery, which is a 10180, I think it's called, yeah. So look at the size of that, 10180, 3.7 volt there. Now you're probably thinking, isn't that fantastic? It's much smaller, I'll just get one of them. Hang on, you're only getting 20 minutes of runtime with these, so bear that in mind. If you're using that as a backup and you want it on max, you're not going to get very long run times. But if you are happy to take that risk, that's fine. And one of the benefits of these ones is, look, they also include USB charging. So if you've got a power bank or some method of charging through micro USB, hey, get one. Absolutely fantastic. I really like this light. I just wish the runtime was a little bit better. But it does have two modes on it, which is, now that's the Claris Mini one. The Rofus, I think it's the TC1 here, I quite like. It's got one of those cool sort of fingerprint sensors, if I can get it to run. 4 seconds, I think you've got to press it for. Hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4. Unless I haven't charged the battery. But what you can do with that one is you can charge that as well. This is a little bit heavier than the Mini one, but they both run on a 10180. You can't remove the 10180 battery from this, but you can on the Claris Mini one. But I think the batteries run out on that one actually. Yeah, because I was doing extensive tests on that. But similar sort of 120 output to that, much smaller, but the battery time suffers. So if you're probably thinking, okay, well, I'll just get something with a bigger battery. Well, you've got the options of something like the Nightcore Tiny, which I like, USB charging again, but you're losing waterproofing with that. But if you're willing to take that risk, not a problem. This gives you about 380 lumens through a TIR lens. I think it's 2000, it's something like 280 milliamp hour battery in here, so you're probably only going to get about sort of 15 to 20 minutes on max for that one. But with this one, I think it's half an hour, but again, you're getting bigger. But if you look at the size difference, look, it's half the height of the Lumintop, but obviously double the width, so it's the same basic size. You're just getting a slightly bigger sort of lens there. but very similar. And obviously this lacks charging. And then you've got the tip, which I really like. It's a solid little piece of kit there. Again, that doesn't give you quite as much output as this. It's not much reduced, but it gives you double the size battery of the Tiny. So we'll turn that off. So there's just another option for you. But again, that's almost the same height, but double the width. So it's taking up a lot more space, isn't it? And then other options which you could go through. I'll go through these quickly because time's quickly running out. But you have like the copy of the Nightcore tip, the Astrolux K1, which is okay. It's much heavier than the tip, and it has daft modes like red light and UV, which no one ever really uses in real life. And then you have the olight. I never remember the name of this one. The i3 EOS and the what I consider almost a copy of it. The Thorfire PF01S. Very similar, although from a AA battery this instead of a AAA. This one will give you around 100, 120 lumens with a tail clicker. Pretty nice, but it's got like a smooth reflector, which doesn't make a lot of sense for this output. Whereas with this one, it's got the a TIR, which is very similar to the jet beam there, as you can see. They use a very similar technique, but I always use this sort of TIR. But you can get an incredible 180 lumens out of a AA, which is nice. But this only has super high or low settings. So there's only 2 settings on that, but it works nice. But you could argue, okay, that's too big for a keychain, even though you could fix it to a keychain there. Look at the difference in size. Yes, you're getting more size because of the tail clicker. So if we take that up to there, it's not that much bigger, but it's certainly bigger. And you're getting the clip, which is okay. It's a semi-deep carry. It's decent enough. It doesn't come flying off every 5 minutes. So okay, but you're paying more, whereas I think this is a better deal. And then you've got another option, something like the MI1C, which uses an aspherical lens. So I'll show you that quickly. You see it's all spill and no spot, which is great for up close, but not much else. But it's quite a chunky, compact thing. If you can see, look at this, look at the diameter. So this aspherical works great up close. It's all spill, but it's not so good for other stuff. But it's an okay unit, and it's got multiple attachment points. You might be tempted to get that. And your other option is to just go for something simple like a Nightcore tube, which I have no problems with. The only problem I have with is light coming back in your face. So I tend to put my thumb over like that, so that the light's generally going where I want it to go rather than back in my face. So, and they're dead cheap, and the tests I did with this show that the battery specs are higher than even Nightcore state, so very well done, Nightcore. So there's a couple of your options, but I highly rate this, so let's get them out the way. Let's have a think. Right, surface, lovely, attachment point nice and wide. I'm confident on this rotary action. 3 settings, glow-in-the-dark gasket, a daft thing that you can, stick on your finger and walk around with and pretend it's Halloween trick or treat or something. All very interesting. I have a lot of confidence in Lumintop. Nice package, nice price, EDC01, TIR lens, makes sense for the size, decent run times. So I'm going to give this 8. It could be a little bit better, maybe. No, in fact, do you know what? I'm going to give it 8.5 because for the form factor, what else could it do? So 8.5, well done, Lumintop. Feels quality, is quality. I like this here. Instead of knurling, you've gone for like a rib design, which, yes, I know it looks a little bit like a sex toy at times, but it certainly works. I like it. It's got IPX8, well done. So 8.5 out of 10. Well done, Lumintop. So enough of me waffling. Let's get outside.